This message has no affiliation with the Department of War. Well, welcome back, everyone. Today we are examining bail reform amid signs of national shift from the no cash policies with a special guest. Texas voters passed Proposition 3 in November 2025, empowering judges to deny bail in violent cases where defendants pose clear danger. It's already working. In January 2026, a judge denied bail to 18-year-old Audrey Matthews, charged with murdering his own classmate, Andrew Meismer, in a high school stabbing over a vape pen dispute. Without further ado, let's dive into this. This is the Martin Memo. The Martin Memo. To unpack the implications, I'm joined by Ken Good, a veteran bail attorney, a professional bondsman of Texas board member, an author of Goods on Bail, and expert in Texas courts. Ken, welcome in. It's great to have you on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And, we've talked just a little bit beforehand, and I've talked with your associate, Mr. Elliot Chang. But for those of the individuals out there who don't know who you are, do you have a little brief introduction to give them on who the wonderful Ken Good is?
Sure. I would say the wonderful King Good. I don't know if a lot of people would agree with that. I think a lot of people would disagree with that. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for, can you believe, 35 years. I would say when I started practicing law, I didn't have any natural highlights, but I really have some natural highlights now. But I really think that's from raising daughters. I have two daughters. The oldest is fixing to get married in June, and the youngest is a senior in college. And so girls are great, but they can also turn your hair gray. But let's see, for as an attorney, I've been practicing law for 35 years. I started out representing doctors and hospitals when they got sued, and so I was on court TV as a young attorney on a case that there was no way we were going to win, and then we won. I argued my first case at the Supreme Court of Texas as a 4-year attorney, which is a huge honor. And I've argued cases at the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. So Texas has two high courts. And then I've argued cases across Texas and in the federal system and the Fifth Circuit, which is, for the federal system for Texas. And I will tell you, the first time I argued a case there, those people were so smart, and they kept asking questions that I had no answer to because I was just a dumb young attorney, and they would ask me a question. And finally, I just said, Your Honor, I don't even know what you just said, let alone can I answer your question? And so I'm kind of known for, being honest. And if I think it, sometimes I say it, probably sometimes I shouldn't say it. But I started representing bondsmen 20 years ago. And during that process, someone asked me to attend a federal hearing in Houston. And I did. And it was on bail reform, a case for bail reform. It was called O'Donnell versus Harris County. And I came out of that hearing very concerned because I thought the judge she was wrong on how she was applying the law. And I thought she had drank the Kool-Aid, so she believed what the plaintiffs were telling her. And that case ended up being cited across the United States as the leading case on bail reform. And and the problem is, ultimately, that judge was reversed 6, 7, 8, maybe even more times. And the Fifth Circuit en banc eventually ruled that case should have never been filed in federal court. And yet in Harris County, they have a settlement where they're still following that case. The Attorney General has entered an appearance to vacate it now, but that case has had tremendous negative impact. I call it bad bail reform across the country, because the case kept getting reversed, but then it kept being cited across the country as an example of what states in bad areas should be doing. So because of that, I decided, we had to become experts, the people within the industry. And so I've written numerous articles on bail reform, on what good bail reform looks like, what bad bail reform looks like, and also just on data, when all these bad bail reform experiments that they are proposing with no data. And so I've written numerous articles on it, and I have, I love to get down in the weeds. I've been in debates on these issues, and it's really fun it's fun to have a debate with people who are smart and who are willing to talk about the issues. It's not fun to get into a debate with somebody who can't answer your question or can't answer your point, and so they just call you racist because they can't answer your point. And that's frustrating to me because I love a smart debate, but I hate name calling, but I'll call you names if you want to call me names. But I would say that's probably it about me. I'm 65, almost 65 in a couple of weeks. So getting up there, but still in good health, still fighting the good fight and enjoying what I'm doing.
Amen. Well, sir, you don't look a day over 45, so I'd say you have pretty good genes or something. You're doing something right. I have to understand what you're doing in that aspect. Maybe after I'll talk to you about that. But
It's
uh,
all genetic because, I was 29 years old. I passed the bar exam and I went to Vegas to celebrate. And at 29, they tried to throw me off the gambling floor because they thought I was under 18. So I've always looked younger than I have. It's just now my age is catching up with my chronological age.
there you go. So, I guess the first question before we dive into the nitty gritty questions here is why are you so passionate on this issue on bail reform? What is your driving focus and factor into this issue?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, what drives me is bail, the private industry bail is the winning story. I mean, if you want your criminal justice system to be successful, you need to be leaning on the private sector more, not less. We have all these arguments that talk about what's fair. There's a presumption of innocence, which the case law has all resolved. That applies at trial, not at the bail hearing. At the bail hearing, it's just what assurance you're going to give the court that you're going to return. And so I think politics has really gotten into this bail debate, and it's making the situation for defendants worse. We have a lot of data out now. So what's made me passionate is the bad bail reform, what's going on in our urban areas is actually making it worse for criminal defendants in the name of equity, in the name of social justice. And so, there's some studies out of Yolo County, California that show two people on nonviolent offenses, one released on simple release, which is what the inner cities are using, one released by the private industry. The one that's just simple release, their promise, that's it, their bare promise, they have a 200% greater chance of committing a new violent offense in the next 18 months. If I'm a family member for one of those people, I don't want my family, any of them, released on simple release.
Yeah.
And that's what's getting lost. This is harming people, and not only is it causing crime to increase, but it's making the situation worse for defendants in the name of social justice.
Yeah, no kidding, sir. And I do want to go back to the whole Texas ruling on Proposition 3. Texas voters didn't just reject no cash bail, they endorsed judicial discretion. From your perspective, why is discretion the missing piece in many bail reform models?
Well, in the bad bail reform movement, so like in New York, they made a list of crimes that says if you're arrested on this charge, you're going to be released on no bail. So the judge's hands are tied. So if you're arrested 10 times on that charge, you get treated the same way every time. So the judge has no discretion. He can't consider that you have a 10-page criminal history, and so what? It's a misdemeanor. And so we're actually taking away discretion of the judges in the name of we want everybody to be treated the same. The problem is that our criminal justice system was never intended to treat everyone the same. We want to put what pressure is needed on you to make you turn around and be successful or a productive citizen. And then whatever pressure needs to be put on me to make me turn around. And I promise you, I'm a wimp. You need to put a lot less pressure on me than we would you, because I'm going to fold really quickly. But that's the whole concept of our criminal justice system. And the bad bail reform movement is cookie cutter. We want to treat everybody the same in the name of equity. And that's not what the system was intended to be like. And so we're actually, in the name of treating everyone the same, we're showing gangs, career criminals, and organized crime how to make millions and millions of dollars out of these cookie cutter crimes where the judges have no discretion.
Right. Unreal, sir. And critics say denying bail undermines the presumption of innocence. How do you respond to that argument in cases where the alleged facts themselves show an ongoing danger?
Well, I would say that the presumption of innocence applies at trial. It does not apply at the bail hearing. And the sad thing is, these are activists that are making this argument. So it's poll driven jargon that's a catchy phrase, but it's all
Right.
been resolved by case law. The case law has all said, and it's been that way for decades, that the presumption of innocence does not apply at the bail hearing. So when that argument's being made, you know that this is an attempt to manipulate you based upon jargon, on slogans, on focus group stuff. It's not based on the law. It's not based on anything else. It's just all a lie.
Unreal. I'm glad that you are bringing light to this issue because I don't think people hear enough about this issue. I know until I pretty much read the material that you had put out, I did not know how big of an issue this is and how it's just getting worse and worse and worse by these woke judge activists, like you mentioned. And there's a tendency to frame bail as either freedom or incarceration. How does the bail system actually function as a middle ground between those two extremes?
Well, I think you would say that those are the two extremes of the far fringes of the party. So we've just ended a period where the pendulum's been swinging very far left. And the
Mhm.
problem with that is when we are soft on crime, crime goes up. And when the public does not feel safe, then they're not going to stand for more crime. And so it doesn't last very long. You know, we've already been through a cycle like this in the 60s where we were soft on crime, we felt safe, we were more forgiving, and then crime started increasing, but the two parties couldn't agree on how to address it. And so one party refused to participate at all. And that's one of the reasons why Reagan was elected with his war on drugs. But the problem is when the pendulum starts swinging the opposite direction, uh, the far on the right is we're going to hold everybody until their cases are resolved, and we're going to start with the violent offenses. The problem with that is the public is never going to agree to pay for the cost of holding everybody, and so the natural middle ground that works is the private industry bail system or the bail system. And the reason why it works is, um, well, the private industry has the lowest failure to appear rate, so it gets the most people to court by far. And if you overlay a level of accountability, so if you fail to show up, well, then we're going to hold you. Or if you don't have a good excuse, then we're going to hold you. Well, then that's the best system. What we're doing the reason why the left is supporting, the activists are kind of supporting hold everybody is because it won't last long because the public won't pay for it. And so they're kind of going along. They're putting out papers saying, well, we shouldn't be supporting this. Well, this is a direct result of the policies that you've been advocating for the last 6 or 7 years. So these policies are your fault, but they won't acknowledge it. But I think some of them kind of like that because they know they won't last. And so they see that as now the pendulum, that will cause the pendulum to start swinging back, where if they would all work together, the middle ground is to offer more of the private industry.
Some reformers argue that risk assessment tools can replace bail entirely. Based on your experience, where do those tools fall short in predicting escalation or future violence?
Well, okay, so risk assessments are an experiment, and it's an experiment using technology. What the people pushing, these advocates that are pushing risk assessment tools, won't tell you is the largest digital companies in the world have all signed off on a press release saying they shouldn't be used for bail. And so the companies that do these things, the companies that design these things, the largest digital companies in the world say don't do it, but still we have advocates that push for them. And here's the reason why you shouldn't be using them. Risk assessments are great at predicting what groups will do, but they're terrible at predicting what individuals will do.
Right.
And one of the reasons why they're so successful on a group is they take into consideration the racial makeup of a group. So when it's taking an assessment or making a determination as to an individual, it's still taking into consideration race, which is probably the biggest argument against them. And so the advocates will say, oh, no, we don't do that anymore. And yeah, right. I mean, the biggest problem I have is the biggest digital companies in the world say don't use them. And yet the activists say, well, we should still be using this digital tool. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
No, not at all. I do want to mention Texas voters approved this constitutional amendment at the ballot box. What does that say about the public trust or lack thereof, depending on where you live, in the direction of national criminal justice reform?
Well, Texas is bucking the trend. It's going in the opposite direction of what our inner cities are doing, our urban cities. They're strengthening the criminal justice system. They are also pushing for more accountability. So, where New York, California are pushing for more simple release, Texas is limiting the use of simple release for violent offenses. Uh, if you're charged with certain crimes, you can't get the Texas equivalent of a simple release, which would be a personal bond. And I see that expanding, especially as more and more data comes out. I think that we're going to see an expansion of this Yolo County study, and I expect that to be devastating. But the activists will continue to ignore it. The problem we have is the activists won't admit that what they're proposing is not working. And so when the activists won't admit what they want is not working, it's hard to find a compromise. And so I think we're at the point where I would say what they've done has failed. I mean, look in Cook County, Illinois, the no surety bonds, the no cash bonds according to the clerk, has resulted in a 70% failure to appear rate. That means 70 out of every 100 people are not showing up for court. And what did the activists say? Oh, that just can't be right. That just can't be true. That's just terrible. Well, the problem is there's so much data now. Harris County is doing this for misdemeanors. They have over 2 years have an average of an 83% failure to appear rate. California, I did a podcast with a DA who does all misdemeanors get this simple release. He says they have an 80% failure to appear rate in misdemeanors across the state of California. And so we're getting more and more data. I mean, there's a sheriff's group in Houston that did a 1-week study and found a 75% failure to appear rate. So, I mean, Cook County is not an outlier. It is right in there with all these other statistics that show that this bad bail reform is actually damaging the criminal justice system, not improving it.
Wow. Unreal. And you've mentioned Cook County, California, New York, Illinois. Are there any big problem hubs that you see, or any that maybe are trending in the wrong direction? Or do you think for the most part things are headed the right way?
Oh, I think that I think with the election of Trump, the pendulum has started swinging back because we've gotten a backlash. We would have had that backlash 2 years before, but the Supreme Court made its ruling on abortion, and that kind of overcame the criminal justice crime backlash. But when Trump was elected, I think the pendulum started swinging the other way with immigration and crime. So I think the pendulum is swinging the opposite direction. So New York has enacted bail reform. They've now rolled it back 3 times. It's also in the current governor's election. It's one of the biggest issues. She said last time that she was not going to roll back bail reform anymore, and so now in the middle of the campaign, she's open to doing it again. California had Gascon as its DA in LA County, and he was, the biggest soft on crime. He was the poster boy for it, and he got only 20-something% on his reelection bid last November and got trounced. And then the guy that beat him was a law and order candidate. So these soft on crime DAs have a short shelf life, maybe 1 or 2 election cycles, and then they seem to get run out of office and get replaced with a law and order candidate. So I think it's improving. I think jurisdictions are realizing that what they were doing was not working, even though the activists won't. And then with what you're seeing with the immigration, where they're coming in and arresting criminals, illegal aliens, I mean, that's had a huge impact on the murder rate nationwide and also on crime in jurisdictions. Look at, I think, Nashville. Look at Washington, D.C. I mean, even look in Minnesota and Indianapolis. They threw a fit about them being there, but their crime rate dropped while they were there.
Right. Unreal. And not to deviate too much from the topic at hand here, but are you at all worried for these midterms coming up here? I know a lot of people are nervous that the Republican side and the Republican Party is going to get shellacked in the midterms. Are you at all worried? Do you see any daylight or any hope?
Well, in a normal midterm election, the party in power loses seats. And
Yeah,
if the Republicans lose seats in the House, they're going to lose control of the House. So you would have to say in a normal election, that's what would happen.
yeah,
But when the problem is when Trump is in office, nothing is normal. And
yeah,
so you can't really predict what's going to happen. I would say that there's no telling. There's a lot of wild cards that can take place, but I think that the scary thing is there's two polls out. I think in the last 24 hours, one of them said 58% of the public, voting public, have agree that the Democrats have gone too far.
yeah.
58% they're too far left.
Yep.
But then another poll says that Biden would have won re-election today. Now, and it supposedly came out by one of the most respected uh, right-leaning pollsters, maybe Rasmussen, I'm not sure on the name, but that's freaking out the right. I don't know. I call bullcrap on that one. I mean, you can't. I mean, you're telling me that Trump can't win against a brain dead guy. I
Right.
mean, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. And especially at this point, I don't think there's any question that Biden was brain dead.
Yeah.
Um, so but you know what? We should all be worried. I mean, I would say we've probably got a 75% chance that the Democrats control the House at the end of at the end of the midterm elections, but that's normal. And so the
Right.
last 2 years of Trump's second term in office, that's the reason why historically that is spent on foreign policy,
Right.
because there's usually by then you know, you can't get anything through Congress until the next national election. So I'm hopeful that that doesn't happen. But if it does, that's what normally happens. But that won't be what we hear in the press. We'll hear, oh, it's a national rebuke of Trump. It's just the
Yeah.
worst thing ever. He's a terrible person. And
Oh yeah.
um, but I will say, I'll end on this part. But every Republican should be worried because from now on, any Republican candidate will be branded worse than Trump
Hmm.
because they've already burned out the Hitler. And so now it's just Trump. You're bad. You're Trump. And so you can see it with the vice president.
Hmm.
Um, they're already preparing for his election cycle and they're saying he's worse than Trump. He's worse. We can't have him. He's worse than Trump. And so that's what every candidate's going to hear going forward.
Yeah. I think it's unreal. And before we move back onto the topic, well, first of all, I do have to say that Biden wasn't brain dead. According to the Epstein files, he was a clone. I just had to throw that little
Yeah.
disclaimer in
Yeah.
there. Oh man, but on a serious note, yeah, just like you said, historically, the party in power always loses the midterms. It just more or less how much do they lose it by? So I guess we'll find out. And yeah, I wouldn't say JD Vance is worse than President Trump. I think JD Vance is a more calculated, mild mannered version of President Trump. But there's still plenty of time, and we'll see. And what?
Well, but I mean, sorry, the vice president, JD Vance, can
Mhm.
express himself in ways that Trump cannot.
Right,
He can have a very intelligent debate and he can defend all of his arguments. And
right,
sometimes, you know, the reason why Trump gets attacked for his mouth, he's not a politician.
yeah,
He's a billionaire. He's not a politician.
yeah,
He's become a better politician
yeah,
and he's better at controlling his mouth this time in office than he was last time,
yeah,
but he's still not a politician. I
right,
mean I mean, it's hard to say he's not a politician when he's president of the United States,
right,
but by and large, he's not historically a politician, and
yeah,
he's more like a general because he's a billionaire. He's used to giving out orders, and everybody jumps.
yeah,
I always think, I've always said, if you want to know what I think about Trump, how does he treat his children? I think
mhm,
that speaks more about the man, Trump. Don't listen to what the press says about him. Don't listen to anything. Listen to what does his children and now his grandchildren
right,
and what's his relationship with them. And everything I see says he has a special relationship with his children and his grandchildren. And, his daughter, he's got a granddaughter that plays golf, and I
Yep.
think she's on the LPGA tour now, but
Yep.
she plays golf with him. She's talked about, where he's given her a hard time when she's shooting, and she's giving him a hard time. And I'm like, don't we all crave that kind of special relationship? So I think uh, that's a bigger thing about the type of person he is than anything else we see on the Cartoon Network known as the mainstream media.
Cartoon Network. That's a new one. I like that. I might have to use that instead of CNN, something of that variation. But I do want to move back on track here. And then the next question I have for you is bail bondsmen are often portrayed as self-interested actors.
Mhm.
What role do bondsmen actually play in accountability, compliance, and ensuring defendants show up to court?
Well, the bonding industry is really very closely intertwined with the criminal justice system, like in Texas, according to the latest statistics from the Office of Court Administration. The private surety bail system is responsible for 86% of all releases in the state. And so, um, that's not just bonding people out of court. That's bonding them out, getting their family involved, but also they have to check in. So they are reporting to the bonding company. And so if they stop reporting, we can report that to the court. Or if the family comes to us and said, little Johnny has started using drugs again, we can report that to the court, and the court can take them back into custody and decide whether they need to stay in jail, or they can do some shock probation, get them back in jail and get them straightened out and then release them again. So there's nothing that pretrial that provides better or more supervision than the private industry. Um, we've got lots of places that try, but the big test is the failure to appear rates. The private industry has a failure to appear rate of less than 10%. We've already talked about these simple release mechanisms that have failure to appear rates of 70, 80 or more percent. And so there's no comparison there. I mean, one gets cases through the system quickly. Everything else causes backlogs because cases can't go forward if they're not there. We have to put them on hold. And the same number of cases being added to the conveyor belt. So if backlogs get to a certain point, the courts have to either dismiss cases or the system will collapse. And, when you start dismissing cases, criminals see that as a green light to commit more crime. And so we need to get cases resolved. We need to get whatever system works to get people to go to court so they can get their case resolved so we can give justice to victims. That's what we need to be using more of. The problem with the activists is they can't admit that that's the private industry bail system. And that's the only reason why the private industry bail system's been around for 200 years, because there's such a difference between it and anything else.
I see. All right. And if a state eliminates cash bail but lacks the jail space or political will to deny release outright, what happens in practice? Are we seeing that play out elsewhere as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best example is Chicago. I mean, where Trump is talking about how many people get killed every weekend. I mean, it's like the city has been turned over to gangs.
Right.
And, and even was it the Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota? I think it was Minneapolis. The mayor was calling on gangs to take up arms against ICE.
Yeah.
I mean, in what city does the politicians interact with gangs? Are urban cities where they've turned over the cities to that. And so when you no longer use the private industry, when you get rid of anything that gives an incentive for people to come to court, what is that going to do? It's going to cause crime to increase. And also, when crime increases, it just creates a snowball, because then you need to arrest more people, but you still have less room. And so then you have to release them. And then they see, well, gosh, there was no consequences for what I just did. So let's do something again. And then now we have the data from Yolo County that says 200% greater chance they're going to commit a violent offense. So you could argue that doing that causes the misdemeanors to be the training ground for tomorrow's felonies.
I like that. That's a good phrase to put it, and I like that. But you are unfortunately you are correct on that issue. And again, this is something that a lot of people need to hear, that these soft white glove treatment crimes, and it does not work, and it does not bode well for anyone. So I'm glad you're bringing this all up. I do have one more serious question for you, and then we'll end it with a lighthearted question. Looking ahead to 2026 and beyond, do you expect more states to move towards Texas model, or are we heading for a deeper divide between reform states and public safety first states?
I think that in the short term, we're going to have a divide, and especially if there is a resurgence in the midterm elections, because it'll be misread by the left as or by the activists as they need to push harder. I think we need one more national election where the soft on crime people lose, because they haven't learned the lesson from the last national election. And so you're seeing people say, well, we just weren't activists enough. We weren't left enough. That's the reason why we lost.
Yeah.
And so I think we need one more national election where they lose for being soft on crime. And then the two parties will recalibrate. They will both be law and order parties like they have historically been, and so then we can fight about other identity issues. And so I think we need that recalibration. I'm hoping that it will continue through the midterms, but history is not on my side to say that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But in the long term, I'm still very hopeful because the soft on crime policies are not sustainable. They just cannot stand up to the test of time. And so the activists don't, if they don't want to admit it, that's fine because the public can see it. I mean, for a long time, we're just now discovering that these activist groups have figured out that they can flood Google with pseudo studies. And then what they call artificial intelligence, when you ask them about what's the best type of release, it'll pull from those pseudo studies and spit it back as artificial intelligence. And that's how we discovered that it's not true artificial intelligence. It's news aggregation.
Right.
And that's a problem. And we're fighting that now. And I think that we're making progress. But I think that these reforms are not working, and everybody can see they're not working. The reason why they're kind of still stuck here is the activists kind of are holding the politicians hostage.
Mm.
If you agree that they're not working and you concede that, we'll put up somebody to run against you. And then you're done. And then you've always been a politician. What else can you do? And
Right.
if we reject you, you sure as hell can't be a Republican. So you're going to stay with where you are or you're done. And that's what you're seeing. I would even argue that's what happened to the governor of Minnesota. He got held hostage until they made him stick his neck out so far that he got his neck cut off with the reforms. I mean, with the fraud allegations. So, I mean, he stuck it out. He did everything they asked him to do. And you know what happened? He got his neck cut off. And we need to have that happen to some more of these soft on crime politicians who are being held hostage by the activists.
Amen. Well said, sir. And I appreciate all of that. And this is going to be great content for our viewers out here. So I hope that they definitely tune into this and tune into your work. Before we go ahead and wrap this thing up and plug in the socials, it's a tradition on my show that we ask one or two questions at the end that are a little more lighthearted. So, with that being said, it was just President's Day weekend. Do you have a favorite president, and also why are they your favorite president?
Yes, I do, and I would say it's Ronald Reagan, and the
Okay.
reason, and this tells you how old I am. So when Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980, I was a freshman in college, and I was a naive country boy from the farmland, and I went to college thinking I was a liberal Democrat,
Mm.
and I was a political science major, and so in the very first class I took, we took a test to see where you fall on the spectrum.
Right.
And so when I got my results back, I was like a little bit right of Ronald Reagan. I was probably a little bit, I mean, I was a little bit left of Jesus Christ because I was a Christian. But I did, so that's the first thing I remember. And then, everything with Jimmy Carter and the not Iran Contra, but the hostages in Iran, and then Reagan. So I kind of grew up with Reagan as a president, and I think so I really admire him. And also you can see he was attacked constantly as president when he was president, much like Trump is. And it wasn't until after he was out of office that we started appreciating him. And so I think that's with any Republican president now. That's where we are. And so, but okay, Reagan.
Yeah, right. Okay, awesome. And then I have one more question for you, just in the spirit of faith. Do you have a favorite Bible verse that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Oh, we're studying James in my Sunday school class, and so I would just use the first chapter of James, and it's a verse that I've actually sent to my parents when, we were having difficult times. And it's really about, oh, and I can't remember what it's talking about, but I mean, I can't quote it verbatim, but it's talking about, when your faith is being tested, don't see that as a bad thing. You're growing as a Christian. And I had a sister who had a 30-year drug addiction to prescription drugs after a car accident. And so we were having a big problem with her and what to do, and we couldn't agree. And so I sent everybody in my family a little card with that verse on it. And that was probably 20 years ago. And my parents died probably 4 years ago. It was still on their refrigerator at their home after they died.
Amen. That's beautiful, and thank you for sharing your story here, sir. And I do have to say, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I'm glad we finally were able to coordinate and set up a time. And just thank you again for your insights. Before we wrap this thing up, do you have any social media or anywhere where people can follow you and all the amazing work that you are doing?
Sure. If people want more information, they can go to our website, pbtx.com, the Professional Bondsman of Texas. So pbtx.com. We have all the little socials. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, X, but we have a blog on our website where we highlight important criminal justice stories. But we also have our own podcast, and there's a link on our menu, but you can also go directly to it, and it's called The Bell Post, and it's located at thebellpost.com. And all we do is talk about what works in the criminal justice system, bail reform movement, what doesn't work. And so if you want to get down in the weeds, we have a whole library of articles and publications and podcasts about criminal justice issues.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. Be sure to go check him out and all the amazing work that he and others have been doing and contributing to America. Well, sir, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for your time and joining us. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that is all we have in store for today. Be sure to join us on Friday as we go over another surprise topic. Share your thoughts on X, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Martin Memo, and do not forget to subscribe on YouTube. Now, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. This is the Martin Memo.